Now, detonate the reality bomb!
I will build a great, great wall.
Some alien race to come down and threaten us.
Is the singularity near?
The truth is out there.
The military-industrial complex.
The 7 mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods, you know.
Change has come to America.
Catapult of propaganda.
From a secure location on top of the ridge in the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
We've been told by people for generations that there are too many of us on this planet. The question becomes then, who decides who gets to stay and who goes? Watch this.
But the big problem, though, is that what we have now is we have this vibrant ecology, this wonderful planet, and we are the invasive species from hell.
We are destroying the ecosystem. We really are weeds in this sense.
I think the word eugenics raises a lot of strong emotions, but basically it's about wanting to have the best possible life for one's children.
Well, eugenics is fundamentally Darwinism applied to people.
Basically, we are trying to create this spirit on our planet which will allow everybody to become perfect.
Taking control of our own evolution. It's really about turning over the choices to us.
That if we are indeed steering our future, then we need to be responsible for it.
It's easy to say that someone else should be cultivated, someone else should be exterminated, when in fact it very well could be them too.
People don't think about that. By the time you think about it, it's too late. People need to decide, what do I believe about human life, and where does that thinking lead? Where has it led historically?
We don't need to stifle one side of the conversation in the hopes that it allows the other side of the conversation to thrive. What we do need to do is have the conversation. And by having it, I truly believe that that is going to make a big difference.
If you've never changed your mind about something, pinch yourself. You may be dead.
Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Whether you're watching at the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Derek Gilbert, or listening at VFTB.net, or wherever fine podcasts are sold, Spreaker.com. iHeartRadio now has View from the Bunker, or wherever else you're downloading us, through iTunes or what have you. We appreciate you allowing us into your life this week. We're going to talk about a topic that we've been covering for some time, off and on, both through this podcast and through our vocation at Skywatch TV over the last few years. A new film that a friend of ours is connected with just debuted last week, and we'd like to make you aware of it because it addresses the question. The title of the film is Human Weeds, and we welcome a new guest to the bunker for the first time, Robert Blaise. Robert, welcome.
Thank you so much, Derek. It's a pleasure to be here.
The title of the film, Human Weeds.
Yes.
Explain that. Where'd that come from?
Well, it acts as a great title in the sense that it's provocative and grabs people's attention, but it comes from a Margaret Sanger quote, actually, where she talks about how life is really can be pictured as a garden, and that people are the plants within that garden. And there are some who she literally calls human weeds who are taking more of the garden's resources than they're contributing back to it. And she says that we need to cultivate our garden or pull out the human weeds of our garden. So we kind of use that as a catalyst and theme throughout the film.
Who did Ms. Sanger, who, for those who are not familiar with the name, is the founder of Planned Parenthood, who did Ms. Sanger identify as weeds?
Well, she was quoting, actually, I believe it was H.G. Wells, I want to say, in that who coined that term. And basically it was what the eugenics movement really sees as those who aren't contributing to humanity as a whole, those who are more sickly, prone to diseases, who are unintelligent, don't have as high IQs. It just really came from even criminals. She kind of identified as those who are unwanted within society. And so she said, we actually have a quote within the film, a TV interview that she did, where she says that she thinks one of the greatest sins in the world, in humanity, is bringing children into the world who are prone to disease and sick and who can't contribute to society as a whole. And she thinks that's one of the greatest sins that a person can commit.
So how did that title then set the tone for your film?
Well, it really just plunged us into a bigger topic than I expected, and one that's hard to handle within 57 minutes. But I think we were able to accomplish it, and that's just the past, present, and the future of human eugenics. And the term human weeds in that analogy of a garden kind of illustrates really well what eugenics is. For those that don't know, it comes from a Greek term, eugenics, which means good birth or good life. And it's basically Darwinism applied to people. So evolution talks about, survival of the fittest by means of natural selection. Well, eugenics took that and applied it to people and said it's more of survival of the best by means of scientific selection. And so it has two forms to it, positive eugenics and negative eugenics. And so the positive eugenics would regard, in the garden analogy, would be those plants that are contributing, and we want to fertilize those. So people who are intelligent, who are healthy, who are, even if we look at Nazi Germany, the Aryan race, if you will, we want to promote their birth and their growth in humanity and have them populate the planet. And then the negative eugenics is looking at who they would say are the human weeds, those who are sickly, infirmed, unintelligent, the undesirables, and really weeding them out through different stages, things like segregation, and we saw that in America with immigration laws and marriage restriction laws and things like that, sterilization, which was bigger in America than a lot of people realize.
Oh, yeah.
And so those, we'll let them live, but will basically stop their family tree with them by sterilizing them so they can't contribute more quote-unquote weeds to society. And then, of course, the ultimate, which is actually exterminating them. And we see, of course, the example of the Holocaust in Germany and actually killing people who they deemed as unfit and unworthy to live.
You really touched on something that hits close to home, and you're probably aware of this because living in Indiana, which is where my wife is from. In fact, my family from Indiana as well. Spent a long time in Indiana before moving to Chicago, and that wasn't by Grandpa's choice, but that's another whole story. Yeah. Anyway, Indiana University and Robert Starr Jordan, or was it Robert or David Starr Jordan?
I'm not familiar.
Well, anyway, he was a very prominent at Indiana University, and then went on to become the first president at Stanford early in the 20th century. And he was a very prominent supporter of eugenics. But the bigger point here is that the United States, as you mentioned, has a very dark chapter of our history that most of us haven't been taught. How influential was the United States in developing eugenics? How long did it last? And what influence did the American eugenics movement have on the policies of the Nazis?
Yeah, well, that was a huge surprise for me in getting into this topic. Starting out, I, of course, knew about Nazi Germany and the Holocaust and things like that. But this project really plunged me into learning about what eugenics was, what its history is, where it is right now, and where it might be going. And one of the big surprises was how popular it was in the United States, and actually openly so. If you do just a little bit of research, you can find pictures, you can find documents and reports of cities and towns holding eugenics fairs. And I mean, they use the word eugenics right on the signs for advertising. They have the best family competition, so your whole family could compete and see if you were intelligent and healthy and good looking enough to be the best family in town. And So that's kind of focusing on the positive eugenics side of things. And it was wildly popular in the United States, and people like Margaret Sanger really then pushed it further and, of course, instituted the negative side of eugenics with things like sterilization and birth control. Of course, she started what's now Planned Parenthood, but was originally she started a birth control periodical, and then also the birth control organization that became Planned Parenthood. And what's surprising to find out is that actually a lot of German scientists were over here in the United States actually learning from American eugenics and even our propaganda, and they took that to Germany, and Hitler then used that to institute German eugenics. And even in the film, we talk about some things that very much mirror the eugenics in America to that of Nazi Germany. And I pull up a copy of just a poster, kind of a eugenics poster that was the US version and then the ones that the Nazis used. And they're almost identical in showing just the propaganda tactics were very much the same from the U.S. in the early 1900s to 1920s, 1910s even, and then, of course, Germany in the 30s and 40s. Germany gave it a black eye, of course, with the Holocaust, so the term kind of fell out of favor, but we make the point in the case within the film that eugenics is very much alive and well today in America. And we see, instead of what the Germans said as Germany is supreme and we need to sacrifice families in a sense for Germany, we see it in terms of a global scale. So we see things like the ideas of population, overpopulation, sustainable development, things like that, of the ideas that, does the Earth have enough resources for humanity and to feed and shelter and provide water and dignity for human life? And are we using too many resources? Things like that. They come right back to those evolutionary eugenics philosophies and saying we need to slow down population growth and we need to have, use resources at a reasonable level. So healthy people, intelligent people who know how to use them, things like that. And they're the same ideas that we were experimenting with the early eugenics movement, just under different terms. And so it's very much alive and well today. And then we make the case in the film how transhumanism is actually a manifestation of eugenics, where we're going in the future and creating, again, because it's an evolutionary starting point in the worldview, the transhumanism is really a manifestation of let's get the next stage of human evolution going by combining human DNA with AI technology and robotics and things like that, and create a human being who's impervious to sickness and disease and ultimately death. And we'll get that next stage of human evolution. Well, that's basically what eugenics' whole goal was to begin with. And so it has that root in eugenics.
The thing that startles me about this whole movement is that the posters from the International Eugenics Congresses or conventions that were held 100 years ago used the phrase self-directed evolution to describe their movement. One of the guests who you interviewed for the film, Dr. Natasha Vida-Moore, at her website uses that exact same phrase, self-directed evolution, to describe the Humanity Plus or H Plus movement, the transhumanist movement. You interviewed a number of transhumanists for the film Human Weeds. How aware are they of this echo of the eugenics movement that we thought was dead and buried 70 years ago?
Yeah, we kind of asked them about that, kind of broached the subject of eugenics, got their thoughts on that topic, and asked, is there a link with transhumanism and eugenics? And what I found, because I was pretty much completely unaware of transhumanism when I started the project and just got into it by doing interviews, and actually one of our early ones with Dr. John Glad, who wrote the book, The Future of Human Evolution, was the one who brought up that its future is transhumanism, and that's where this is going. So we just plunged right into it and started learning about this movement. And I learned that people who are part of transhumanism just come at it from lots of different perspectives and angles. They have lots of different beliefs about it and about where it's going. So you're going to get a plethora of opinions on the subject. So some will denied that there was a connection to eugenics, and a lot because it has that black eye from Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, of course. Others readily said, yes, it's basically the same philosophies, just in different practices. And so Dr. Anders Sandberg, who we interview in the film, said what's wrong with the old guard eugenics movement was threefold. It was based on bad science, it was coercive, and it was done through a centralized government who was putting this on its citizens. And he said, if we use better science and allow people to choose and let it be from the people, not from a government oppressing them, then the idea of what he called liberal eugenics should be a good thing, and that we ought to be able to decide what we want to do with our bodies. So he said the idea of eugenics of basically having the best life for one's children, I think it was a quote from him, is something that we should all want and do. The old way of doing eugenics was bad and led to horrific abuses, he said, but the basic premise of it is something that we should embrace. So he was one that made the connection. Others said, no, we have nothing to do with eugenics. This is totally new. And really, the transhumanist movement focuses more, I would say, on the positive eugenics issue rather than the negative eugenics. They're more about promoting the better human being, the ultimate where we want to go, rather than the exterminating or eliminating of the weaker or the unintelligent.
The unfit.
Unfit,
yeah.
Exactly. So you got a mix.
Then you can start getting into oogie questions about who gets to decide who's fit and who's not. How did you select? Because you present both sides in the film. You've got some who are clearly, I can tell by their names, and a couple I've interviewed, such as Dr. Georgia Perdom. I've exchanged some emails with Dr. Martine Erdmann, so I know where they're coming from. Having interviewed several transhumanists like Zoltan Istvan, I've got a sense of where some of them are coming from. How did you choose who you were going to interview and whose viewpoints you'd present in the film?
Yeah, well, we kind of figured out the topics that the film was going to hit, and then we just did research, online and with people that we knew, of saying, who are people that speak about these issues? We don't really care what their background is. We just want to know who are the big names on these issues. And then we wanted to get people from various perspectives because we wanted to present an objective, balanced view of something that's very important to life on Earth and the value. How do we determine the value of human life? And so rather than just hitting people with one perspective and what I believe about it, we wanted to present a safe place to start the conversation and hear what are the different issues surrounding this, to get people thinking, to get them asking questions, and then to motivate them to do some research and decide for themselves what they believe. So we really did want to get experts who were big names on both sides of the conversation, try to, as fairly as possible, let them present their views. I would love for everyone that I interviewed, to watch my film and say, this was a great film. I loved how it was presented. I feel fairly treated, and to promote it. That's kind of my goal. And I, as the filmmaker, kind of step back and don't try to push my perspective on these overtly and let the audience decide. It's more of a conversation starter film than presenting just one side and this is what you should believe. But as a filmmaker, of course, I have an agenda, and of course I can edit and kind of guide the audience along on a thinking path, and I do that to really show them what is the value of human life, and where do ideas come from, and where do they logically go. And that was a big thing. We interview a lot of people on the street, actually, in the film, and kind of do a mini version of the film like that. And what was fascinating is a lot of them embrace the ideas that were taught about population, about Earth's resources, about evolution. And then when we take them along the lines of where do these ideas come from and where do they go to, it's just a big eye-opening moment for them. And they start to just that you can see their minds working, and they start to flip and change to more of a value of human life in total, no matter what your background is. And so that's kind of been our goal. But even towards the end, when we're kind of climaxing in the film and it's all wrapping up, we still present people that you've seen in the film from both sides, praising we need to protect human life, and life is special on this planet. And that was a big thing that surprised me when I started this project. I honestly and somewhat foolishly believed people on the other side of this issue are neo-Nazis who hate humans and want to exterminate half the human population. And I got to interview them and realized, oh my goodness, these are fun people who I could have a barbecue with, on the weekend, unless they're vegetarians, and then I guess we have corn on the cob or something, But they're fun to be with, and they love life, and they love people, and that surprised me so much, and my perspective of them changed.
Right,
but I realized we have different starting points, and we have different value system, and that leads to different results. And from my perspective, where they end up in the belief system is dangerous for humanity. But I can't just say because it's dangerous, because I disagree with them, they're people who hate humanity and are, demons walking around. They have a consistent worldview, and we need to understand the worldview, where it comes from and what it leads to, and understand empathetically the people on the other side of the fence and listen to them before them presenting what is truth and presenting them with some hard questions. So that's what I attempt to do really in the film, is be more of on the objective side rather than pushing my personal agenda, but get people thinking about these issues and starting some conversations.
Well, kudos to you for that, because you're right. It is, especially in our social media fueled world, it's very easy to demonize people on the other side of a particular issue without understanding their worldview. The thing that I found in interviewing, for example, Zoltan Istvan, who's a very prominent transhumanist, was that his worldview makes perfect sense if you begin with the assumption that there is no God. That
exactly.
Yeah. So from his perspective, his worldview makes all the sense in the world, and all he's trying to do is alleviate suffering. Okay, that's common ground. We have some common ground there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You said that when you began this project, you really didn't know much about transhumanism, the movement, or its origins, its goals, and so forth. What was the most surprising thing that you discovered in the interviews about transhumanism?
Yeah. I guess what was surprising to me was the lack of consensus, in a sense, of what the whole movement comes from and is about and what its goals are. Some people are just in it for the technology. It was hilarious at the conference, the GF45 conference that we went to. It seemed like half the speakers said, we have nothing to do with Star Trek. That's ridiculous. It's a TV show. And the others were like, yeah, we're pretty much Star Trek. We like technology and things like that. So just it's a movement that attracts a lot of people and from various backgrounds and beliefs. And so you can't just peg all transhumanists believe X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. They come at it from different perspectives with different goals in mind. Some of them are just about the technology. Some of them are about wanting to help people have better lives. Some of them are wanting to get rid of disease and death, and some are wanting to become gods. And essentially, there's just a whole range within that movement. And so it's one that we have to be careful with, I think, in just how we present and label. Because some people may embrace transhumanism and not believe some things that a lot of others do believe. So that was probably the most surprising element for me.
From your own perspective, then, what is the principle or say foundational belief in your worldview that leads you to conclude that transhumanism, taken to its logical end, is dangerous?
Yeah, well, the film kind of, I would say maybe like a fifth of the film kind of touches on transhumanism. It's kind of the focus of what's the future of human eugenics. We go into the transhumanist movement. So it's not necessarily a film about transhumanism. It does take about maybe of the 57 minutes, probably about 8 or 10 of those minutes addresses transhumanism. What's fascinating, at our world premiere that we had, I actually had a couple people come up to me and say, your next film needs to be about transhumanism, because that's so interesting. I so want to see you and learn more about this. So it's a fascinating movement for sure, and one that we touch on in the film again, but it's not the central theme or message of the film. So it's one that I believe has its ultimately, for the most part, I would say most transhumanists probably are evolutionary in their foundational starting point. And they're into transhumanism because they want to create a better human being, someone who can survive longer and better and thrive and do more and be more than our current stage of human evolution in a sense. So that's a different starting point than where I come from. And what we address in the film is you got two starting points. Either we're an evolutionary accident that came from nothing, and so life has no meaning or no value. This is Eric Metaxas in the film kind of bringing this out. Or he says, or you were created in the image of God, and so life has infinite value. And all life has infinite value because it's all created in the image of God. So if you start with the evolutionary perspective of we're an accident and life doesn't have intrinsic value and meaning, it's all about what you can contribute, what you can do, then some people are worth more than others. If you are created in the image of God, then all life has intrinsic value. So I have a different starting point in coming to it, in that I do personally believe that we were created in the image of God by God. And so that's just going to lead to a different view of the value of human life than your traditional transhumanist would. Again, in the film, I kind of try as hard as I can, being a very opinionated person myself, to remove myself from the equation and let both sides speak for themselves and present their views. So as the filmmaker, I try not to insert my agenda and my beliefs as much as make sure my side is well represented, but also make sure the other side is well represented as well, and let people ultimately decide.
Having done one form of broadcasting or another since 1980, I can tell you that it's difficult when you're opinionated to hold yourself back. I still find myself getting comments from people. It's like, you should shut up and ask more questions, let your guests talk more. It's like, yes, but I have this psychopathic need to tell people what I think. The film, the length of the film, Human Weeds, is it clocks in at 57 minutes, which is relatively short for a topic as rich and as deep as this. Skywatch TV, for which I work Monday through Friday, and put in the majority of my time in the course of a week. We took a crack at this topic, and we came in at 3 hours. So how did you get it down to 57 minutes, and why did you try to keep it to that length?
Yeah. Well, I actually, when I tried to put all of the interviews, including the on-the-street interviews, onto one premiere project timeline, it could not fit. It matched the timeline. So I had over 24 hours worth of footage that I had to get down to 57 minutes. So that was some grueling work to do that. Originally, we were creating the program for PBS, for public television broadcasting. I had done an internship with a man who produced films for PBS. For public television, and he had given an open invitation to anyone who takes his class and interns with him. If you have an idea for a documentary that might work, tell me about it, and we'll work together to get it on there. And so I pitched the project to him. He loved it. He submitted it to their board, and they said, we can't approve the project at this point, but we'll give you the green light to go with it. It sounds like something that's interesting. Go for it. So that's what we were aiming for the last 6 years, I would say. And so because we wanted a PBS, a public television program, they have very specific limitations on the specifications. Right. And so it was 56 minutes and 57 seconds is your parameter of how long it can be. So that's why we were forcing ourselves into that time length. Within the last year and a half, that distribution option has come off the table for now. But within the last 7 years of making the film, online distribution has just skyrocketed. And so we're going towards a video on demand distribution option for the piece. But I think having such a small, for this topic, such a short time frame to have to present all these ideas was really helpful in making the film stronger, getting the ideas down to their core issues. And we don't just run people over and like speed talking. It's not like you're at an auction hearing someone, just rattle stuff off at high speed. It has some relaxed pace to it that anyone who has never heard of the term eugenics can learn what it means, learn where it came from, learn where it's going. And at our premiere, we had about 180 people there, and we asked right after the film was done, raise of hands, how many of you learned something new that you didn't know coming into this film? And I would say probably 170, 175 of those people raised their hand. They learned something new. Then we asked them, at what point were any of you bored at any point within watching this film, even for a moment? Were you at all bored? And about probably, I would say, 6 to 8 people raised their hands. So it tells me most people coming in to watch this are going to learn something new. They're going to be engaged for the entire 57 minutes. It's a good paced film. It's not going to lose them. It's going to hold their interest. And so I think the restricted time length ended up helping us in the long run, even though it didn't ultimately serve the purpose for which we made it that length.
Yeah. You've got a Kickstarter campaign going for the film Human Weeds. Tell us about it. What's the goal?
It's basically to get the film distributed. Films were made to watch, and so we need to get it onto a distribution platform for people to be able to watch it. And to do that, we're going to be using a company called Quiver, which will put our film out on iTunes and Amazon and Google Play for us automatically. And so people hopefully within a month, will be able to rent or purchase the film on those 3 outlets to be able to watch it. And then they also have relationships with and are going to pitch the program to Netflix, Hoopla, and Comcast Xfinity for us. That will take about 3 months to determine whether we actually get on those platforms or not. But the iTunes, Amazon, and Google Play will be there hopefully within the next few weeks. So the Kickstarter campaign is really to raise the funds to get it to that distribution outlet, to actually get the film out there so that people can watch it and access it. And from people that I've talked to in my own sphere, we're going to be able to meet our goal of raising enough funds to distribute it within a matter of the next few days. And so we have some stretch goals with our Kickstarter campaign to, obviously this film took money to make. It's not a free film.
Sure.
And so my parents were gracious. I started making this film the same spring that I graduated from high school and college, and it was what I wanted to go into and do. And they saw my passion and my drive, and that I was diligent in learning filmmaking myself. And so they said, we're going to help you accomplish this dream. So they really pulled from their savings to pay for equipment and for travel and for the expenses to get it professionally color corrected and the audio sweetened and all of that. So our first stretch goal is to, in a sense, make back the money that we put into the film. And so if we could make that by the next 3 weeks, I would love to, in a sense, pay back my parents for what they put into producing this project before we even hit distribution.
Yeah.
And then our second stretch goal is a bit bigger and kind of out of this world, if you will, but it would allow us to pay all the people who were involved in the gripping and editing and shooting, and me as the editor and director, basically pay people for their time, because everyone that's been involved in the project, even our interviewer, Carl Tykrib, who I'm sure your viewers know, donated their time and volunteered for the project. So I would love to, and my goal is, even within distribution, to pay them back for the time that they put into it and make it truly a professional piece, that they donated their time, but they're actually going to get paid for it. So that's the goal with the Kickstarter.
Okay. Robert, where do people find the Kickstarter, and where do they find, or the project, the program? The campaign is the word I was looking for there. I kind of fumbled around through the mental file cards until I found the right word. The Kickstarter campaign, and where do they find out more about the movie Human Weeds?
Yeah. The easiest way for both is to go to our website, humanweeds.com. they'll be able to watch the trailer right there on the homepage. They'll see a link or an image they can click on to go right to the Kickstarter campaign. The Kickstarter campaign also has the trailer on it. And there's another page that gives a little bit of a description about the film. It shows all the people that were interviewed within the film. So that's all on the Human Weeds website. As things progress with distribution stuff, we'll be updating the website to show people where they can go and watch the film. So humanweeds.com is going to be the easiest way to access our Kickstarter campaign or to find out how people can get a hold of the project. When things slow down here in distributing, I'm hopefully going to be also doing a DVD run that people could go to our website and order some DVDs if they prefer DVD over online. I know things are moving away from the hard disk and going more to the cloud. So we want to open that up first for people, but hopefully we'll also have a DVD option in the next month or two.
All right. Robert Blaise is the producer of the film Human Weeds, online at humanweeds.com, the website anyway. And from there you can find the Kickstarter campaign to contribute and get this out to a wider audience because the eugenics movement, again, it's sort of a black hole of American history. And yet it was taking place within living memory of people you probably know. I mean, right. my mother is 81 years old, and there are people who, she lived through World War II, and but I was born 1962, and there were people who were still being sterilized here in the United States without their knowledge or consent into the 70s. So this is not like this is old, ancient history, something that we don't talk about because it doesn't happen anymore. This is within living memory of your intrepid host here. So it's something that we need to let people know about, because the transhumanist movement, while not the focus of this film, is, whether they recognize it or not, and I suspect that many of them do not, it's basically bringing this back into the public square and legitimizing it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point of the film, is here is eugenics, here's what it was historically, and it is around today. It's alive and well today. It's going to be in our future. It's just not going to be called eugenics. It's going to come under names like transhumanism, like sustainable development, like overpopulation, population control, all of these kinds of things. So it's even here today amongst yours truly, not just our grandparents, though they lived when it was called eugenics and popularized by eugenics. So yeah, absolutely.
All right. Robert Blaise, thank you for your time, and we hope we can offer some kind of help here to getting this film out to a wider audience.
Well, thank you so much, Derek. It's been a pleasure.
Check the show notes at VFTB.net, or if you're watching this at the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Derek Gilbert, you can follow the link in the notes below to the website for the film Human Weeds, and of course the Kickstarter program linked from the website there to bring this topic to a wider audience. Eugenics is not dead. It's only been rebranded in the 21st century. And we, as the church, followers of Jesus Christ, should be the first line of defense against this reprehensible, frankly, Luciferian concept. Human life is precious simply because we are human. Being created in the image of God doesn't mean that God is a biped. It means that we are created as his image bearers. We are his moral agents, his representatives on planet Earth. And that applies to you whether you are brilliant, average, however you are enabled, whoever you are at any stage of your life or development. From birth to death, you are created in the image of God. And as such, human life, biblically speaking, is sacred. It's why God told Moses that for the shedding of human blood, there would be a reckoning. Even from animals that shed human blood, there would be a reckoning required. The eugenics movement declares that some, well, to use the title of the film, are human weeds. That's per Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood. And that is why we as the church need to get out ahead of this. This didn't go away when Hitler's life was ended back in 1945, assuming that his life did, in fact, end in 1945. It didn't end with the surrender of Germany in 1945. Let me put it that way. And so, again, this is an important topic that we need to get out ahead of. And it's one that will be addressed, I'm sure, at the Transhumanism and the Hybrid Age Conference from True Legends and Skywatch TV coming in September 14th through the 16th in Branson, Missouri. The conference nearly sold out, which isn't a surprise whenever you get Steve Quayle, Tom Horn speaking on the same stage, as well as Dr. Hugo de Garis, Richard Dolan, Sharon K. Gilbert, Timothy Alberino, and more. For information, log on to gen6.com. That's GENSIX.com. The next conference that we'll be attending, at least at this point, our dance card is still filling up for the rest of this year, has got some news to pass along. This is the Hear the Watchmen conference coming to the East Coast. We're going to be on Long Island, August 9th through 11th. August 9th through 11th, and they've decided to extend the early bird registration through June 15th. This is big news because they've not done this before, because there are two things connected to this. First of all, the early bird discount of $99 for the registration extended through June 15th, and on top of that, they've authorized us to offer the promo code EARLY. So if you can save another $20 off of that by using the promo code Gilbert20, that's Gilbert20. So you can register for the Hear the Watchmen conference coming to the Hyatt Regency, Long Island, and that's the other bit of news, August 9th through 11th for just $79. Take advantage of the early bird discount through June 15th and use the promo code Gilbert20, and you're basically saving, what's the regular, $119? Anyway, you get it for $79, and that's the first time that Hear the Watchmen has done this, because this is their first conference on the East Coast, and they want to make this a success with speakers like Henry Groover, Carl Gallups, L.A. Marzulli, Rabbi Zev Parat, Dr. Michael Lake, Pastor Casper McLeod, yours truly, Sharon K. Gilbert. It will be worth seeing. And again, you can save yourself on the cost of registration by doing it soon. Again, the early bird discount through June 15th drops the registration to $99, and then take an extra $20 off the price by using the promo code Gilbert20. The website for registration is hearthewatchmen.com. That's hearthewatchmen.com. What else we got going on? Of course, got the East Coast Prophecy Conference coming in October to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. This will be our first trip to Gettysburg, and this is a place I've wanted to see for a long time just because of my interest in the battle. So very interested in seeing the battlefield. But this is the first time we'll be speaking at a prophecy conference for Southwest Radio Ministries, Southwest Radio Church. Pastor Larry Spargimino, Dr. Bob Blaise. They'll be coming to the Ozarks here in just a couple of weeks to talk about it. We'll be recording some programs for Skywatch TV. But we'd like to see you in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. That's October, what are the dates on that? I was going to say 14th through the 16th, but I don't think that's correct. 16th through the 18th, I believe. I think that's correct. Anyway, it's at the Wyndham Gettysburg in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Stephen Strang, one of the other featured speakers, along with me, Joe Artis Horn, and Tom Horn, our CEO at Skywatch TV. We will all be there. For more information and to register for the East Coast Prophecy Conference in October in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, swrc.com. Kind of a short program today. We're dealing with a computer crash. You can't see it, but right in front of me, between me and you, if you're watching this at the YouTube channel, is my MacBook Pro, which last night went into a kernel panic. That's not a military term or an office. It is basically the operating system freaking out and crashing about every 10 minutes. So we're in the process of rewriting the hard drive. Thankfully, all the images and video from our three weeks overseas, Israel, Rome, Jordan, and Sardinia, saved and backed up to multiple external drives. Didn't want to lose any of that. So anyway, that's kind of what we're dealing with today, which is why at the last minute we decided not to produce a Gilbert House Fellowship or PID Radio this weekend, but already had the interview with Robert Blaise recorded, so just putting a little tag on it, not too difficult with the iMac over here. But yeah, MacBook Pro still in the process of rewriting, and since this is kind of how we make our livelihood these days, writing books and stuff, kind of important. So we'll be back to a full schedule next week with the Gilbert House Fellowship, our weekly Bible study. We're in the middle of the book of Ezekiel, which is one of the key books in the entire Bible, because when you get to chapter 38 and 39, you deal with the Gog-Magog conflict, which I argue in my forthcoming book is the same as the Battle of Armageddon. So, kind of important. So we'll pick up where we left off next week there, and PID Radio will return, probably give you a summary of what we saw and did during our summer vacation, or late spring vacation, as the case, to be more accurate. It was an amazing trip, and the reason we collected as much video and as many images as we did, because we're putting together essentially a travelogue, which will be available as a DVD extra for my next book, which is called Last Clash of the Titans. We now have the cover art that will be out in August from Defender Publishing. And this travelogue, which we're calling Search for the Titans, will accompany that. Couple hours basically showing where we were on our tour and why it's relevant to the topic. The old gods, connecting the dots between Greek mythology and Bible prophecy. That's what we did on the tour. That's what we'll do. That's what I do in my next book. And so I'll be speaking and writing and talking about that for the foreseeable future anyway, because I think either I'm way out in left field or I've hit on something. So we'll let you decide. View from the Bunker, a production of Gilbert House and released under a Creative Commons Attribution Now Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. The opening theme is by Kevin MacLeod. His website is incompetech.com. Our announcer is D.C. Good. Remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.